The Philadelphia Eagles showed against the Detroit Lions that they have the number one defense in the NFL, and it's going to be the reason they're the number one seed in the NFC.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. And thanks so much for making the Locked On Podcast Network the number one sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 back in bonus bets to use across the entire app. Defensive domination, that's the name of the game as the Eagles defeat the Detroit Lions 16-9 on Sunday Night Football to get to 8-2 and to really close in on the number one seed in the NFC. We'll talk about the offensive issues that continue to plague one side of the football, but how about Vic Fangio's defense? A round of applause. I know it was windy and cold in South Philadelphia tonight, and that definitely played a part in both sides of the ball. Both teams' offense is struggling. But what this Eagles defense did to an offense that has Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jared Goff, a good offensive line, to completely dominate them today, where it's maybe the second most aggressive team in football outside of the Philadelphia Eagles. They were not able to convert a single fourth down when you had a bunch of fourth and shorts. You had a fourth down in the red zone, and they completely got shut out by this Eagles front seven and the secondary to hold that team to just 9 points on the year. On that game, when on the year Detroit has been putting up some crazy offensive production, it's unbelievable. I said it during the game, I think now that Jalen Phillips has been added to this defensive line, Nakobe Dean is back healthy, completely dominating. I mean, that sack he had on that blitz in the second half was unreal. The coverage rep he had on Jameson Williams in a close game down the sidelines was perfect. Getting Nolan Smith back and Brandon Graham. The breakout of Moro Ijoma and Jalix Hunt, both of those guys were in Jared Goff's face all day today. The combination of all of that and all the breakouts in the secondary. Quinyon Mitchell right now looks like the best cornerback in the NFL. Cooper DeJean got an interception today. Heck, even Adoree Jackson made two really big-time plays, two forced incompletions in the second half of a one-score game. All of that combined makes me believe that the Eagles' defense we've seen the last two games, that's given up a total of 16 combined points to the Lions and Packers, two of the top five teams in this conference, makes me feel like they're just as good as the 2024 Eagles defense, if not better. Because what were the two biggest pieces from last year's defense that you are now missing this year? Or maybe you could say the top three. It was Josh Sweat and Milton Williams on the defensive line, and it was Darius Slay at cornerback. Adoree Jackson has not been Darius Slay from 2024 the last 2 weeks, but the last two games, ever since they traded for Michael Carter and Jair Alexander, that lit a fire under Jackson, and he's played some great football. Now, the Packers didn't really have any receivers to worry about, but against Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown today, he struggled a little bit against Williams, who has all-time great speed. Against St. Brown, he was great. That coverage rep on 4th and goal in the back of the end zone where he punched the ball down to the ground. I mean, what a great rep. He's been a solid player that you're winning with now. You're not winning in spite of. So you've been able to replace Darius Slay. Jalen Phillips the last two games. I mean, this trade looks even better than the deadline move that Howie made his first Super Bowl season when he got Jay Ajayi. Jalen Phillips has wrecked 2 games in a row. He was all over that field today, had a sack in the first half, consistently got to Jared Goff. I think he's better than what you saw from Josh Sweat the majority of 2024. Now, the Super Bowl, of course, is a different story, but the regular season version of Josh Sweat, what we're getting from Jalen Phillips right now is better than what we saw from Josh Sweat last year. Moro Ijoma, what we saw today against Green Bay, what we've been seeing all year from the Eagles' leader in sacks, has been better than what you got from Milton Williams in 2024. And then you just add all the other young players from last year's team are a year better. And I would say this year's unit is just as good as last year's. And last year's defense was the number one ranked defense in all of football. You could make the argument it's the Denver Broncos this year, but at least over the last 2 games, there has not been a better defense in the entire NFL than the Philadelphia Eagles. And they had to yet again carry an offense that is filled with star, prime, veteran talent on contracts that get them paid top 5 annual salaries for their position every single year, and yet they have not been able to put up over 20 points in back-to-back weeks, only 2 touchdowns combined in the last 2 games. The fact that the youngest defense in the NFL has to do that is beyond frustrating. It's why it's a conflicting feeling for me after such an important win. It's so encouraging and exciting to see this defense look that good again, but yet it's so infuriating too that they have to do this for the Eagles to win football games. And we'll talk about if this is sustainable for the rest of the season. Spoiler alert, I think it is, because of how good this defense is, and I don't think they're going to get worse anytime soon with how deep they are and how much star talent they have at the top. But the fact that they have to do this is so angering. But they've been able to do this now against the Chiefs. They've shut down the Buccaneers. The Rams scored 26 points, but overall they held in check, Matt Stafford and an 8-2 Rams offense in the second half of that game. They were able to shut down the Packers completely. They were able to completely shut down the Detroit Lions today, which on paper, again, is probably the second deepest offense in all of football, maybe behind the Eagles. You could make the argument maybe the Lions are number 1. They're certainly top 3. I mean, it's unbelievable. Vic Fangio is just a wizard. And it's not just him, but Howie Roseman. He was on a podcast the other day, and he talked about how the 2022 defense that almost broke the Chicago Bears' all-time single-season sack record, just a few years later, there's not a single starter left from that team. Only Brandon Graham remains from that unit as a rotational defensive lineman. The fact that just like 2.5 years later, not a single starter remains from that unit, and yet the Eagles are back to being on top of the defensive world of the NFL. It's proof that Howie Roseman, you can make the argument, maybe he's not the best GM in NFL history, although there's a strong argument being made for that, and the Jalen Phillips trade is just more proof. It's just another resume builder. I think it's definitive with the way he has reimagined this defense over the last couple seasons. It's proof he is the best rebuilder in the history of the NFL. Like, I'm in awe of what they did today. I mean, Jalen Carter, especially the defensive tackles, because Jared Goff is not a mobile quarterback, and pocket passers that struggle against pressure like Goff does, he has historically, they hate pressure at their feet up the middle of the field. Jalen Carter, Moro Ujoma, and Jordan Davis just wrecked that ball game. They were so unbelievable today. And it wasn't just them. I mean, Jalix Hunt, Phillips, as I said, had a sack. Jalix Hunt today, 4 games in a row, he's been one of your best players. 6 pressures, which led the team. 5 quarterback hits, which led the team. 1 hurry, and a team-leading 16.7% win rate. This defensive line doesn't need to blitz. Like, you don't need blitzers anymore. Sure, Nakobe Dean can do it in timely fashion. He has 2 sacks in 2 weeks off blitzes in big spots. But they don't need to do it. It's a luxury now. It's not a necessity like it was the first half of the year. This team can win with 4, which means they can now drop back 7 guys in coverage, and there's so much more they can do with their personnel. That's on Howie Roseman. That's on Vic Fangio. I think they're the best defense in football right now. And Quinyon Mitchell in the secondary. Like, Cooper DeJean got that pick today. That was big. As I mentioned, Adoree Jackson was really strong. But Quinyon Mitchell, when it comes to mirroring wide receivers, when it comes to man coverage right now, I respect the hell out of Pat Surtain, Derek Stingley, Sauce Gardner. There is not a better cornerback right now in the NFL that's playing at a higher level than Quinyon Mitchell. Again, against really good receivers. Amon-Ra St. Brown's one of the best slot receivers in football. He's one of the best separators in football. Jameson Williams is one of the fastest receivers in the NFL. Against 2 star receivers, Quinyon today, in coverage, 4 targets, 1 pass breakup, 0 catches allowed, and a 39.6 passer rating allowed. Quinyon Mitchell this year has allowed just a 41.9% completion percentage in coverage. That's the lowest by any player with 50-plus targets in a season. Since 2018, Quinyon Mitchell, the first 10 games of this season, is having the best run a corner has had in 7 years. This defense can win you a championship. I think it is absolutely sustainable that even if the offense remains the frustrating unit that's inconsistent all year long, the rest of the way, they can still win a Super Bowl. And I'll get into that coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles postgame show. The Eagles take it over the Detroit Lions. Final score, 16-9. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by Mint Mobile. If you're still overpaying for wireless, it's time to say yes to saying no. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, no BS. I said yes to making the switch and getting premium wireless for just $15 a month. Mint makes it simple. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can even bring your own phone and keep your same numbers and contacts. I love that you're getting the same quality service that you had before, but for a fraction of the price. The setup is super easy. You keep your number, and then you're running in minutes. So say yes to say no. Make the switch at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. The Philadelphia Eagles remain red hot. A 4-game win streak now to get to 8-2 on the year. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Thanks for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network, not just in the country, but worldwide. The Eagles get it done against the Detroit Lions, a team that had this game circled on their calendar, feels like now forever. I mean, it's very funny logic to go off of, like, oh, if we wouldn't have got upset in the second round last year against the Commanders, we totally would have beat the Super Bowl winning champs that dominated a dynasty in the Super Bowl. Like, yeah, it would have been different if they came to Detroit. Like, I don't know, it probably would have been closer than the Commanders' NFC title game. But that same logic the Saints used in 2018 to justify what happened in 2017 is hilarious to me, and the Eagles punched them in the mouth today. They dictated terms from start to finish. They were the more physical, I don't want to say the more disciplined team because of all the awful penalties, especially on offense, but they were the more physical team, and they forced their will on that Detroit Lions offense. And people were asking me after the game, like, is this sustainable? If the Eagles offense remains this inconsistent, and man, were they sloppy today, undisciplined, 2 bad penalties on the last 2 drives, trying to close the game out, could not get the 4th down tush-push, 3rd and 1, and they don't convert back-to-back tush-push plays. The passing game, the play calling was terrible. Jalen Hurts was wildly inaccurate today. This has been kind of the status quo for the 2025 Philadelphia Eagles. The offensive line was banged up. The run game was solid, but it really couldn't get explosive because of the offensive line. If all of that continues as it has the majority of 2025, and yeah, you still have some of your elite moments like the Vikings game, the Giants game, the first half against the Bucs, the second half against the Rams, but your defense remains this good, like top 3 in the league, and you're not turning the ball over. Can you win a Super Bowl that way? It's an interesting question because can you win the division that way? Yes, you already did. Can you win a playoff game or 2 that way? Yeah, I think so. I think you can win the Super Bowl that way as well. If you combine a top 3 defense in this year's NFL that has seen so much inconsistent play on the offensive side of the football, if you combine a top 3 elite defense with home field advantage, that's why this win, like, yes, you want to strive to that standard, that great perfect standard the Eagles always set, but why I really do focus on this just being a win is because of that 1 seed and how important that is in the NFC. Making teams come to Philadelphia in January compared to going to LA or going to inside Detroit or going to Seattle or going to Lambeau, it's so instrumental. So getting home field advantage in Philly, having a top 3 top maybe 1 defense in football, and then a turnover-free offense that's very clutch late in games, yeah, I think that can win you a Super Bowl. But that doesn't mean you're not at times this year, the rest of the way, that doesn't mean you're not going to need your offense at times to score more than, the last 2 weeks they have 2 touchdowns. Like, that's not going to be good enough. There will be times that another team has some sort of production on your defense, and you need your offense that feels like $1 billion invested in this unit to, God forbid, score a couple touchdowns a game. I'm not even asking them to go back to who they were in 2022 or down the stretch of last year. But yes, even though you can win a championship with this defense carrying you, the offense has to be, I think what they have to do is find at least one consistent part of that unit. I've come to terms with the passing game. This year, it's not going to get better from a play calling perspective. Like, Kevin Patullo is who he is. Nick Sirianni is not going to move off of him. I think he saw what happened firing Sean Desai during the season in 2023. Kevin Patullo to him is what Press Taylor was to Doug Peterson. He's not going to get rid of him during the season. He's going to ride this out. And I think Jeffrey Lurie would have to fire Patullo himself or force Sirianni to fire Patullo to get Nick to make that decision. So that's not going to happen. Jalen Hurts, we know, is going to have some incredible passing performances, and then he's going to have some games like this, like the Packers game where, he's kind of just a game manager that doesn't turn the football over. So I've come to terms with that, with the passing game. There's going to be peaks and valleys. But can we at least get back to being a dominant run offense? If you can do that, then I would say you can win a championship this way. Then I would say it's sustainable being inconsistent on offense. As frustrating as it is, because they have so much talent on that side of the ball, I will say it's sustainable if they can just get consistent in one area of that side of the ball. Maybe it's running the football. Maybe it's passing. Can you find a way to use the intermediate parts of the field? I really did like how they were more aggressive throwing the football today. They took more shots down the field. They made a conceited effort to get A.J. Brown involved early and often, even when he wasn't wide open. He's one of the best players at catching the football in traffic in football. Just give him a chance. And I liked seeing that today. I wish Devontae Smith wasn't completely removed from the game plan. That needs to change next week. But I did like some things they tried to do today on offense, even though it didn't work. The problem is this team still doesn't see the middle ground between 2 different extreme approaches. It always feels like this team is either completely giving up on third down and running a draw play to Will Shipley, or they're running a streak to A.J. Brown down the left sidelines when it's only 4th and 8 or 3rd and 10. There's a middle ground. It's called intermediate passing. That area of like 9 to 18 yards, like they need to use that part of the field more over the middle of the field. And I know Jalen Hurts naturally is not that kind of quarterback, but if I'm Kevin Patullo, if I'm Nick Sirianni, I am forcing him to do that by drawing up and calling plays that utilize these weapons in that way more. If the run game is not going to be consistent because of how banged up this offensive line is, and that's what's not sustainable. If this offensive line does not get healthy, Lane Johnson's starting to look like Jason Peters, where he can't make it through games anymore, and Cam Jurgens has been battling this back injury forever. They got to shut him down for a bit. If they can't get healthy, then no, they're not winning a title this way. But if they can get healthy, hopefully the run game gets back on track. But if not, I've said on the show before, you got to find a way to produce easy yards. You got to find other ways. It can't just be a check down or Jalen Hurts running around trying to play a hero role like he did today on that great ball to Jahan Dotson 35 yards down the field when Jalen's in the back of the end zone. That was an incredible play. It can't always be improv, deep shot, or check down / give it up running back draw on 3rd and long, the coward's draw. There's got to be a middle ground there. The offense needs to find that. So it's frustrating. I wish that there's no excuse for this offense to not be able to carry and close games out easier, to win by more than 1 score every single game. It's infuriating considering the resources invested in that unit, the proven ability of all those players that have won championships for this team, that have competed for championships for this team. But in a vacuum, yes, I do think that this defense can carry you to a championship with home field advantage, with a clutch offense that doesn't turn the ball over and finds one consistent part of their game. That's all I'm asking. I wish that they could score 30 plus a game. They are more than capable of that with their talent. I'm not expecting that the rest of the way based on just things I've accepted about this offense. All I'm asking is you find just like one consistent part of it to help out the defense, because I'm sorry, this offense couldn't even put the game away at the end, which is something they used to be so good at. The penalties to Cooper, the false start, the 3rd and 3 that got called back to a 3rd and 8 because of another penalty on the final drive. You got lucky that garbage pass interference call was made on A.J. Brown, or else the Lions might have had a chance to tie that football game up. Like, can you close games out? Can you find a way to run more consistently? Can you find a way to get the intermediate passing game involved? That's what they have to figure out. Just get one part of this game consistent and get that offensive line healthy, because without that, they're not going anywhere. They need to get Cam Jurgens shut down for a little bit. Lane Johnson, are we beyond the point of return at 35 years old? Is he the new JP, where just these nagging injuries like Darius Slay last year are just going to make him play a game and a half, or, a half, 2.5 quarters every single game? And then Fred Johnson's kind of your Isaiah Rodgers of this year, where he's coming in a lot on the weekly. I'm not sure. I hope not, because that is the Achilles heel. We talked about it on the squad show. Like, what would be the Achilles heel of this football team the rest of the way? It would be the offensive line just never getting back to who they were last year, because there were times this year, or this game, I should say, where the Eagles are trying a screen play in the first half or an outside zone run call, and you try to watch Cam Jurgens get up to that second and third level, and he just can't get there in time. Tyler Steen, 4 of the 5 starters this week were on the injury report. That's not sustainable. Those guys couldn't find bodies to block, and the offense has to figure things out. I don't know if there's a short-term fix for this season, but there's a middle ground I think that they need to find to at least help this defense out a little bit. But yeah, the identity of this football team, crazy enough, is turnover-free football on offense, turnover-free clutch play, and then an elite defense. And you got to hope that this offense at the right time gets hot like they normally do. I believe that they will. They did in the playoffs last year when their number was called. They did answer the bell. I'm going to hope that happens again this year. But yeah, for the majority of the time with home field advantage and this defense playing the way it does, yeah, I do think they can win a title this way. In this year's version of the NFL, considering the Chiefs might not even make the playoffs and every offense is kind of struggling, I think they can do it. That's how special this defense is. All right, guys, coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast, we'll wrap up the post-game show, taking a look at the NFC standings. Is the 1 seed locked up? We'll talk about it next right here on Locked On Eagles. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or, want to ride the hot hand like Tyrese Maxey, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a much bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving away new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and to play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, final score. The Eagles take it over the Detroit Lions 16-9. The Eagles are now 8-2 on the year. They have defeated the Lions, the Packers, the Buccaneers, the Rams, the Chiefs. This team, it really is unbelievable that with all the drama they've had with A.J. Brown off the field, with all the inconsistencies on the offensive side of the ball with play calling, with Jalen Hurts' up and down performances this year, with all of the injuries on the offensive line, with just winning a Super Bowl, and now the come down of that and the first place schedule, for them to win all of these games, to always find a way. There's very few teams I've watched in sports for the 28 years I've been living on this planet, there are very few teams that I've seen that know how to win more than this football team. It is just in their DNA that no matter the distractions, no matter the situation, no matter how it takes to win, the opponent, we're just going to freaking get it done. And they just freaking get it done, man. I mean, it's so impressive. They've passed every test. And now they are really closing in on the number 1 seed. Again, they have head-to-head tiebreakers. Who are the best teams in the NFC right now? It's the Eagles. It's the Rams at 8-2. Big win they had today over the Seattle Seahawks. So it's the Eagles. It's the Rams. It's Seattle. They're one of them. It's Tampa Bay. It's the team they played today. It's Detroit. It's the team they played last week. It's Green Bay. Like, those are the 6 teams that are the best in this conference. The Eagles have beaten, of those 5 opponents, of those 5 teams they're competing with for, I think, the number 1 seed, they've beaten 5 of them. And Seattle lost today to LA, so you have a game up on them in the win column at 8-2, and they're what now, 7-3, I believe? Or are they 6-3? I can't remember, but they have 3 losses. So you have a stranglehold on this number 1 seed. That's why there's again, I think the theme of the show is a median, a middle ground, like a balance of. And I saw Tim McManus of ESPN wrote an article about this struggle the Eagles always have of, yes, there's this like almost near perfect standard that you always want to strive to. And, A.J. Brown kind of hit on it last week about just saying, just because we win doesn't mean we can ignore our problems and put a quote-unquote Band-Aid over it, which I totally agree with. Jalen Hurts calls it the standard. And you need to strive to do better because there will be games that call for more than just one unit carrying you and saying, oh, we just need 1 touchdown out of the offense. Like, can you get that done? There will be games you need more from your entire team. So having that standard is never being satisfied is very important. Dynasties, champions require that. Like, that has to be a part of your DNA. But you don't want to take it too far and you're miserable when you win games, even if it's not perfect. Because in the NFL, especially this year's NFL for some reason, wins are very hard to come by, especially when you have a first-place schedule. So if you can get it done, that really is what matters most. I'm not going to say that's all that matters, because context is key for these wins. How you win also does matter. But in these situations that the Eagles find themselves in, like trying to get that number 1 seed, which is so crucial for the playoffs. Like every time the playoffs runs through the link, they get to the Super Bowl. So getting the win, too, is very important, and they need to find some sort of satisfaction in that. They need to find some sort of pride in that, because in 2023, when they were 10-1, they were miserable. Because the minute they lost that 49ers team and the Cowboys back-to-back weeks, they were like, oh, we're not nearly as good as we thought we were. Like, all those wins didn't matter. Out the door. They were miserable because they weren't able to reach that pretty much perfect, unattainable standard. So you have to have that to strive to always improve. You don't want to get complacent, but these wins are so huge. Like, this was a positive win to shut down and completely bully one of the best offenses in the NFL. Excuse me, a team that has been circling this game now for a year, that they wanted to come say, this is our conference, and for you to just bully them every 4th down, whether it was a fake punt or some sort of trick play where Jared Goff's lining up as a running back. Jalen Carter said, F that. I don't care. Moro Ajoma's like blowing that up. Jordan Davis like batting that ball down. Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, by the way, today, 5 combined pass deflections. Like, it was like an NBA game. Dikembe Mutombo, like, not today. Not in my house. Just blocking the hell out of the ball. Putting it on the glass. This was a positive win. The offense even too, like, there are some things to take from this. I like that they got A.J. Brown involved in different ways. But now you can't shut out your all-pro receiver in Devontae Smith, who's having a career year. Again, there's a middle ground. You got to find a way to balance those things out. I like that the offense was more aggressive today in certain spots. You got to balance that out. Use the intermediate part of the field. I'm not saying go back to giving up on 3rd and 10 and just running the coward's draw, but maybe you don't have to take a 50-yard vertical shot to A.J. Brown on 3rd and 7 every single time. You know what I mean? There's a middle ground. The Eagles got to find it. But this is a really, really big win, and the Eagles remain the number 1 seed in the NFC. Stock up, stock down coming up tomorrow. Until then, thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Thanks as always for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.